because I like writing with sparkly gel pens because I am a millennial. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Just Another Struggling Writer, the Beleaguered Author's one-stop shop for commiseration and hopefully inspiration. My name is Carrie Scher, and I am just another struggling writer. For today's video, I thought I would have a bit of fun at my own expense and talk about a few of my own personal writing red flags. First up on this list has to be that I don't write every single day. And the reason for that is when you are a working parent with a full-time job besides writing, extracurricular activities, at least 3 times a week, with a household to maintain, and other fucking hobbies, writing just sometimes doesn't happen every day. And I tried to make myself into someone who did write every day. And then on the days where it just didn't happen for whatever reason, there was a parenting emergency, or I was, or one of the kids got sick, or I was sick, or there was a family obligation that took all day, I would just spiral into this depressive episode of I am worthless, I am a bad writer, I cannot possibly do this because I didn't write today. And so for me, I have found that allowing myself the grace to not write every day, to actually allow for breaks in my writing time, is actually more helpful than trying to force myself into a rigid schedule that will send me spiraling if I don't happen to have time to write every single day, which happens more often than you would think. If I was a full-time writer, it would be different. It would be my job to write every single day. But as it is, I have to carve out time where I can find it. And there are just days where I don't get a lunch break at work, or I am with my kids until 9:30 at night. And then I have to, do a load of laundry or wash the dishes or take a shower, and I just end up not having time, and that's okay. My second writer red flag would be that I don't use said and asked 100% of the time. It's true. I use speaker tags. Of course, the key here is to not overload yourself with one or the other, but I'm actually a reader who finds the 100% use of said and asked to be extremely boring. And I've heard writers say that you should never be aware of the writer as you're reading a book, or you never want to make people aware that they're reading words. It should just be flow natural, and so you don't want to call attention to the actual word choice. And frankly, I think that's bullshit. I find speaker tags, when used in moderation, makes writing more immersive. I find that when it's just said and asked all of the time, it actually takes me out of it, because I prefer to know how the course of a conversation is going. Where's the emotion in it? So there are times where you're gonna whisper, or you're gonna yell, or you're gonna groan. And as long as you're not using those types of words 100% of the time, I think it's absolutely appropriate to do a mix and match sort of situation. In a similar vein, my third writing red flag is, I use adverbs. I do. I was raised on a healthy diet of the Boy Wizard series that shall not be named, and that particular author had a penchant for using a lot of adverbs. Reading those books back as an adult, I realized that there were too much, but again, it's the same with the said and asked. If you use them in moderation, I think they're just fine. They can be a great way to add color to a situation or a conversation or a scene where a more descriptive verb, which some authors also tell you not to use, is not always going to be the right word. And so, I use adverbs. I think it's fine. And again, it's all about moderation. There shouldn't be an adverb on every single line in every other sentence and every paragraph. You should use them as needed, sparingly, but I don't think you should be afraid of them either. And I really don't trust other authors who are talking down on writers who do use them. My fourth writing red flag is I write in present tense. I started writing this way because when I was a young woman, I was really into like video game RP, and in those sorts of situations, I found it easier to write in present tense because you were like in the game, like doing things actively, and it felt more like you were in the moment doing those things. And I found that I really had a taste for it, and I really liked the way that it provides like a sense of urgency in the writing. And just like, I know that some readers find it that it takes them out of it, and I disagree. I think it draws a reader more into the moment and makes it feel more immediate and gives it more urgency. My next writing red flag is I actually prefer to write longhand, that is on paper with a pen. I don't know what it is, but I found about 5.5 years ago that writing longhand was just more creatively stimulating for me, and that I often got really intimidated by a blinking cursor and an empty word processor, and I got too much in my inner editor and never made real progress when I was in a word processor, whereas when I was writing in a notebook, it's funny, what held me back from scratching out what I was, anything that I didn't like, is the fact that it looked ugly and it was wasting paper and ink. And so I found that it was easier to get past my inner editor and just keep writing because I didn't want to waste ink or paper or have these big ugly scratch marks on my paper. So it is way more time consuming, and it really hurts my wrist in my hand. But I'm just one of those people that find it really creatively stimulating to write longhand. And I love flipping through my notebooks when I filled one up and seeing the changing of colors and all that, because I like writing with sparkly gel pens because I am a millennial. To that point, my next writing red flag is I actually use the notebooks that I buy. Yeah, I do. I buy notebooks, and I don't just keep them stored away because they're too pretty to use. No, I buy notebooks specifically to write in them. Now, to be fair, I go to the Walmart and I buy ones with silly, goofy covers on it, or, things that might look pretty, but I'm not spending $30-$40 on a nice Moleskine notebook to write in. I'm just buying a spiral notebook from the grocery store and using those. But I do look for ones that have pretty covers on it if I can, on ones that I haven't used before, just to give myself a little bit of variety. But yeah, I use the notebooks that I buy to actually write in. And you know what else? My next writing red flag, I don't drink coffee. It's true. I've never liked it. I can't stand the smell of it. I don't like the taste of it. In my opinion, if you have to dump a bunch of cream and sugar into it to change the taste, why the fuck are you drinking it in the first place? I'm also not a big tea drinker. I've tried tea in the past, and it was a little bit more palatable to me than coffee, but I just don't have the patience to learn how to brew tea or find flavors that appeal to me, because for the most part, the general tea flavor is also just not something that appeals to me. So yeah, I don't have a whole collection of mugs that have cute little sayings on it because they don't get used. So my next writing red flag is actually kind of a serious one that I'm trying to fix, and that is that I am really bad at writing description. And this is directly tied in to the next red flag, which is I got my start in writing fan fiction. And as you may know, that in fan fiction, because theoretically your audience is already familiar with the characters and the setting, a lot of description isn't required. It's more about the character interactions and the plot. And so because I spent so long in fan fiction, I think I started writing fan fiction when I was like 13 and continued until I was about 25. all of my writing was geared towards character interaction and plot. And so even to this day, when I'm writing, I'll go back and I'll reread drafts and find I never actually described what my main character looked like, or I never actually described like the world that they live in. I'm moving from conversation to conversation and plot point to plot point without like taking time and energy to describe, to paint a visual picture for readers. I am trying to work on that. I really am. It's slow going, and it's not something that's going to be solved. It's something that's like my first drafts are always going to be a little bit thinner than like second and like subsequent drafts, because I'm going to be word vomiting and forgetting about description. It's just the way that I am. And, in theory, I won't put out a polished book without description, but my first drafts are pretty much floating heads in empty worlds speaking to each other. So as I mentioned, next red flag, I got my start in fan fiction. I actually don't think this is something to be ashamed of. Fan fiction is a great way to cut your chops and learn about character dynamics and relationships and how to develop plots that are separate from the ones that the characters already exist in. So it can be a great way it can be a great bridge into original fiction. If you start writing fan fiction, you're still learning a lot of skills that are taken into original fiction. Now, of course, there are pitfalls, like I said, description, and maybe other fan fiction writers don't have this issue, but it's something I definitely did. Figuring out how to describe your characters naturally and your settings in a way that doesn't feel obtrusive. That is what I struggle with. But again, I think that writing fan fiction is perfectly fine, and it's a perfectly valid way to get your start in original fiction as well. Another writing red flag that some writers may think is a big no-no is I will not start a draft. I won't even start planning a project until I know exactly what the ending is going to be. I am just the kind of person where I like to know where a story is headed. I do not like to meander at all. I like to know what the climax is going to be, how it's going to end. Of course, there's wiggle room, the finer details I don't necessarily need planned out right away, but I do need to know what the last 10-15% of that book is going to be before I'll even consider starting the planning process for the draft, because I just need to know where I'm going. And some writers might think that I'm writing specifically for an ending, and in my opinion, that's always true, even if you're a pantser. You're writing for an ending. Okay. And everything that you write up until that point is for a specific ending, whether you know it or not. I just happen to know it. And lastly, my 10th writing red flag is I actually hate writing. Specifically, I hate drafting. I don't hate it. It is my least favorite part of the process. And I know that is bad of me to say because I want to be a writer, but drafting to me is the most soul-numbing, mind-crunching, teeth-pulling, veins-opening part of the process. It is so hard for me. I love planning. I love getting into the nitty-gritty details of what my world is going to be, of what my characters are going to be, of what the plot is going to be, of what the interactions, what the revelations are going to be, how I'm going to weave in foreshadowing, how I'm going to kill off a character. I love having all of those details in my head and all of the planning process. But when it comes time to sit down and actually write the prose and write the narrative, oh my gosh, it is so hard for me. I hate it. And it just feels like I go through those fluctuations of, oh my gosh, I can't do this. I'm a terrible writer. I'm never going to succeed. This is garbage. Who would ever read this? All the things that you think when you're in a first draft, which is so funny because when I get to revision, I'm back to feeling happy again. I love revision. I love cutting things. I love editing. I love printing out what I've written and getting a pen and marking it up and knowing exactly how I'm going to change it to make it better. And I love that. I love taking an axe to darlings. I love making things tight and concise and clear. But the process of point A to point B makes me want to do something drastic sometimes. I think that's something that as I continue to refine my process and as I continue to work on my drafts, as you may recall, I actually have only ever completed one draft. I've probably written 200,000 words in bits and pieces of other drafts that never were completed, but one complete draft. And so I think that's something that could get better with time as I just adapt and get used to it, and also as I refine my planning process so it is a little bit clearer by the time that I start drafting and all of the puzzle pieces are already in place. It doesn't feel so much like it's pulling so much out of me to draft. And that is it. 10 writing red flags that are mine to bear. And I hope it's clear from the tone of this video that I don't actually think any of these are that serious. If you share any of these red flags, it doesn't make you a bad writer. I don't actually think there is any writing advice in the world that is one size fits all, except write. Write how you want to write. Write whatever motivates you. Write whatever is getting words on the page is working. If you are sitting down and writing, you're a writer. If you are sitting down and working towards an end goal, you're a writer. It doesn't matter if you write it in 3 months or 30 years. If you're writing, you're a writer and you're doing it right. Pun intended. I would love to know what your writing red flags are and what you think is the worst of my writing red flags. Please let me know in the comments. I have been really enjoying getting to know some of you and chatting, so please drop a comment. I respond to all the comments I receive. And that is it for today. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you want to support the channel, please like and subscribe. Or if you'd like to support my channel in another way, I also have my Ko-Fi link listed below. For my next video, I will be doing what else but a weekly writing vlog. I hope you look forward to it, and I will see you then.